I guess you can use a snappy slogan like defund the police, but you know you've lost a big audience the minute you say it, which makes it a lot less likely that you're actually going to get the changes you want done. But if you instead say, let's reform the police department so that everybody's being treated fairly, divert young people from getting into crime. And if there's a homeless guy, maybe we send a mental health worker there instead of an armed unit that could end up resulting in a tragedy. Suddenly, a whole bunch of folks who might not otherwise listen to you are listening to you. So the key is deciding, do you want to actually get something done, or do you want to feel good among the people you already agree with?
So that was Barack Obama last night in an interview calling Defund the Police a historic civil rights movement, a snappy slogan that loses people and it doesn't achieve anything, and you got to be much more moderate and centrist and focused in your demands and blah, 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 blah. He's wrong. It's BS. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but I want to focus in on how Cori Bush and Ilhan Omar, two young congresswomen, Bush isn't even technically a congresswoman until January, stood up to this BS and did so fantastically. So first, you have Ilhan Omar saying to the Obama claim that, we lose people when we say defund the police. Ilhan Omar says, we lose people at the hands of police. It's not a slogan, but a policy demand. And centering the demands for equitable investments and budgets for communities across the country gets us progress and safety. And Cori Bush, likely even more powerfully here, basically says, with all due respect, Mr. President, let's talk about losing people. We lost Michael Brown Jr. We lost Breonna Taylor. We're losing our loved ones. It's not a slogan. It's a mandate for keeping our people alive. Defund the police. And that's the correct approach. Obama is wrong for so many reasons, but one of the crucial reasons he's wrong is that social movements don't have to and really shouldn't tailor their messaging to political expediency, because that rarely achieves the result. Social movements are not political parties. Defund the Police is not a political party. No one ran under the Defund the Police party. That's not a thing. And so this social movement is only responsible to the causes and people it represents and the values it represents. And Obama sounds here like a lot of people who criticized the civil rights movement did back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. That's how they sounded, saying, oh, you have to moderate your message. You can't be too radical. You can't be too controversial. You can't be too forceful, because if you are, the white moderates won't like it, and they'll drop their monocles and they'll get all scared in their white picket fence suburban neighborhoods, and you're not going to get anything done. And that's not what happened. People like Martin Luther King, people like the civil rights movement were unpopular with the broader electorate until they weren't, until they won the battle of messaging. And yeah, there's debates in that movement about how radical you should be, but those movements, even the moderates, because King was a moderate in the civil rights movement compared to some like Malcolm X, the moderates were still vilified by people, frankly, by former presidents, types like that, like Barack Obama. People like that saying, "Oh, you can't be this radical. You can't actually demand basic human rights and dignity so forcefully, because if you do, there's going to be a backlash against you." And those movements won. Imperfect victories, but victories nonetheless. But let's look at the politics here. The politics here are very interesting, because we have to be clear. No one ran on Defund the Police. The Democrats didn't run on it. The only person that had any kind of profile that ran on it was Cori Bush, who explicitly ran on Defund the Police. The Democratic platform did not have Defund the Police. And indeed, it should be said that Joe Biden made the frequent argument that he was increasing police funding. That Joe Biden's argument was, yeah, we can look at how we allocate police funding, and that's something I support. But first and foremost, I want to give police hundreds of millions of dollars more a year. I want to give them $300 million or so. And if anything, and Biden said this multiple times, Donald Trump wants to reduce federal funding to local and state police, meaning, and this is what Biden said, Trump is the one working to defund police. And so the argument from the Biden campaign, and again, I know the presidential campaign is not the entire campaign, but it is the campaign that most people see, made it clear. I want to upfund the police. I want to refund the police. Trump wants to defund the police. And so if the snappy slogan, if the movement was so toxic, why didn't it hurt Trump? Why did the man that want to give more money to the police not win the anti-defund the police movement, while the man that wanted to cut funding not lose police and not lose the supporters of police? And the answer is because Republicans will paint any Democrat, regardless of what they believe, as an anti-police, socialist. This is one of the rare moments that Pete Buttigieg was right, going all the way back to the primary. And I covered this at the time, where he basically said, look, they're going to call Biden a socialist. They're going to call me a socialist. They're going to call Bernie Sanders a socialist. They're going to call anyone up on the Democratic nomination stage a socialist. And so the answer to that is not worrying day and night about how Republicans define us, but focusing in on how we define ourselves and owning it. And the Democrats did not learn that message. They worried and worried and worried about how a grassroots social movement was defining itself instead of actually doing its own work to define its own message, to represent people. And what they did was they went with the scared moderate direction, and it didn't matter. If people are going to brand you as supporting defund the police, then just support it. Support it because it's the right thing to do. Now, one more thing here, and this is important because a lot of people are going to say, why do these two rookie congresswomen, why are they going at a president that won two, general elections and has a lot of electoral success? Who are they to speak to him? We have to remember that predominantly policing is a state and local issue. The federal government has a role to play, and it should, and it does often positively or negatively, but it's primarily a local and state issue. And so let's take a look at how Obama did in his party leadership at the state and local level. And what you'll find is that during his 8 years as president, the Democrats lost about 1,000 state and local seats. 1,000, more than 100 a year. At the Senate level, and the House, and in the Supreme Court, and in governors' mansions, and in state legislatures, and in state senates, the Democrats took walloping after walloping under the Obama administration. The man that says you need to have slogans and ideas that win over people or you won't achieve anything utterly failed to achieve much at all and still lost. Every time he went to the Republicans with compromise on taxes, on entitlement reform, which is basically cuts to essential services, on healthcare, on Supreme Court picks. And every step of the way, they basically told him to go F himself, and they still won. They still won. And they still called Barack Obama a radical that doesn't like police and doesn't like working class white people and doesn't like good down home Americans, and he wants to take your guns and all of these sorts of things. They said all of this. None of it was true, but it didn't matter because the Democrats never actually stood for anything. So remember this. Barack Obama wants you to think that he's the oracle for how to win these debates. It's not going to work. These movements need to fight for their own messaging. They will succeed because justice is on their side, because they are correct. And the Democratic Party can either get on board or get out of the way. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not running on defunding the police and you're actually accusing Trump of defunding the police, then don't blame defunding the police as a movement and a slogan when you lose. Cori Bush is right, Ilhan Omar is right, and Barack Obama is wrong yet again.